progressive lawmakers are now making a new push towards monthly stimulus payments for Social Security beneficiaries, as well as the low-income households. Not only that, folks, but listen to this. It's been announced that SSI, SSDI, and VA recipients could see a big monthly increase in their checks very soon. Social Security recipients are on track to receive the biggest cost of living raise in 4 decades, as sky-high inflation rapidly diminishes the buying power of retired Americans. The Senior Citizens League, a nonpartisan group, estimated that the adjustment could be as high as 8.9% based on the March inflation data, which showed that consumer prices soared 8.5% from the previous year, the fastest year-over-year jump since December of 1981. The annual Social Security change is calculated based on the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, which jumped 9.4% over the past year. Mary Johnson, a Social Security analyst for the Senior Citizens League, told reporters, "I've never seen my estimates as high as what I'm seeing right now, and the 8.9% will be the highest since 1981. Now, if Social Security beneficiaries see an 8.9% increase to their monthly checks next year, it would mark the steepest annual adjustment since 1981, when recipients saw an 11.2% bump." The Senior Citizens League previously predicted that the COLA for 2023 could be 7.6%. The Social Security Administration will release the final adjustments percentage in October. The estimated figure could see and be subject to change and ultimately hinges on whether inflation has peaked or will continue to rise. Now, several economists said there are signs that inflation may be subsidizing, with a surging gas price accounting for much of the jump in prices last month. Excluding gas and food, core inflation actually cooled slightly between February and March. However, other economists have noted that the outlook remains uncertain as volatile things like the ongoing crisis threaten to further roil global markets. The Social Security Administration announced last year that the average benefit in 2022 jumped 5.9%, which amounted to a monthly increase of $92 for the average retired American, bringing the full amount to around $1,657. At the end of April, the total shortfall for an average benefit was around $162. Analysts have said that inflation means lower savings, and for people who don't have enough savings, it can mean higher debt. The interest with rising rates, especially on credit card debt, can be very costly for people living on fixed income and hard to manage when they're in retirement. Since 2000, Social Security benefits have lost roughly 30% of their purchasing power due to inadequate adjustments that underestimate inflation and rising healthcare costs. The group has also pushed Congress to adopt legislation that would index the adjustment to inflation specifically for seniors. So there is a ton of news about the fourth stimulus payments, folks, that you want to know. The IRS announced that another batch of checks will be sent out. Here's the latest news if you're on Social Security, SSI, SSDI, or RRB. If you're still missing stimulus money, then know this. The IRS has reported that it has already completed sending out the $1,400 stimulus checks. But many of you may qualify to get more money depending on your 2021 taxes. As part of the American Rescue Plan, the IRS issued more than 175 million economic impact payments to help people cope with the effects of the crisis. As part of the American Rescue Plan, the IRS issued more than 175 million economic impact payments to help people cope with the effects of the crisis. The legislation gave the IRS a December 31st, 2021 deadline to distribute those payments, which amounted to the third stimulus check for the crisis. Last week, the IRS announced it has officially sent out all third stimulus payments, but an important thing to remember, friends, is that some $1,400 third stimulus checks may still be in the mail. In an official news release, the IRS is no longer issuing third stimulus payments as required by law. If you never got your third stimulus check or think you maybe do more money, please don't worry, because the third economic impact payment was an advance payment of the 2021 recovery rebate credit. So you can recoup missing funds by claiming the credit on your tax return, and this is especially
now on lowering costs. In President Biden's first year, the economy added an amazing 6.6 million new jobs, the most ever for a president's first year. This figure surpassed just about every forecast from a year ago. It's a reflection of how far our economy has come since the start of COVID, and that the right leadership in office makes all the difference. But we all know Americans still need more help, especially when it comes to lowering the cost of living. Democrats know what the American people know. The pandemic decimated our supply chains, our labor supply, and much more, causing prices to increase for everyday items. We've never had a pandemic to this extent in 100 years, and obviously it interrupted the economy and its supply chains and labor supply. For the past year, Democrats have been the party focused on finding solutions to lower costs, to lowering the cost of living for everyday Americans. As early as last summer, Democrats pushed to have the Senate approve legislation to relieve U.S. supply chains and increase domestic manufacturing, which thankfully was bipartisan, and which the House passed recently as well. Soon the conference process for that bill will begin. But this is just one example out of many. For the past few years, I've heard from my colleagues about a number of proposals. For the past few weeks, I've heard from my colleagues about a number of proposals they've been working on aimed squarely at helping Americans better afford the basics, from medications to the cost of food, to the cost of cars, to more. Later today, Democrats will use our weekly caucus lunch to talk more about some of the ideas my colleagues are working on. Mr. President, lowering costs must be a bipartisan effort. Americans in states both blue and red, and in between, need relief as soon as possible. While many on the other side of the aisle have spent a lot of time giving floor speeches and presenting charts about rising costs, where are their actual proposals? We don't hear what they do to solve the problem. Attacking the problem doesn't make it any better. Proposing solutions, as Democrats are doing, does. Republicans should step up and say what their plan is to fight inflation, not just point fingers. That solves no problem. Democrats will continue to propose legislation on cost cutting, and we're going to continue for javelins and stingers and anti-aircraft weapons and refugee help. Every last penny that the U.S. sends to Ukraine is money well spent. This morning, it's reported that President Biden will also announce another $800 million in military assistance. This means even more anti-tank, anti-aircraft missiles and other weapons that have been the most effective on the battlefield for the Ukrainians. And last night, the Senate also unanimously passed legislation supporting investigations by the International Criminal Court into potential war crimes by Putin and his regime. I thank Senator Graham and the many, many others who backed this bill. The Senate also confirmed the Ambassador at Large for Global Criminal Justice, our lead advocate in making sure this investigation is robust and it is swift. These steps are all necessary. Over the last 2 weeks, we have seen Putin attack the largest nuclear plant in Europe, attack the Chernobyl containment site, attack a children's hospital, and attack designated humanitarian convoys. Putin, so far, is not winning militarily. So now this evil man is trying to win by massacring civilians, massacring babies, parents, the elderly, and targeting apartments, just as he did in Syria, just as he did in Chechnya. If this doesn't equal a war